So how are you people? So before I start, I would ask, how would you rate yourself? Just have this in mind. How would you rate yourself from 1 to 10 when it comes to understanding and content readiness with respect to your polity portion in prelims? When I'm asking this question, you should have this in mind. Give yourself some rating, 1 to 10. It could be 2, it could be 5, it could be 6. Just write it down in front. You must be having some paper in front of you. And those who want to share, they can share in the comments. And as I move forward in this introductory class of PSP, you are going to gain some concepts. You are going to gain some clarity on how to approach some trivial questions which make lasting difference when it comes to you are having call for mains or not. It doesn't matter how many times you have gone through polity. It's my promise you are going to gain something from this class. As this class ends, I would request again, what is your rating now? Then again you need to look where you are standing now when it comes to understanding what is needed for the polity in prelims and when it comes to conceptual understanding. Got it? So it's 5-2. So we are good to start. So first of all, you all know that when it comes to polity part, we have two kind of questions being asked in our exam: static part and dynamic part. Static means the provisions which are already there, some rules which are already there, some political institutions, some powers which are already there. When it comes to dynamic, dynamic means current part. Right? This much you should know, that polity questions will be from static as well as from dynamic. But orientation of this class would be that I am going to tell you that what you need is structured mapping of all subtopics. In consecutive classes, along with this class, what I am going to do, first I am telling you how we are going to move forward. After that, I am going to take some concept and I am going to elaborate over that. The classes which are starting from 1st March would be strictly as per the scheme of polity. It means I'm going to start from historical background of Indian Constitution, then making of the Constitution, then salient features of the Constitution, then we are going to move to union territories, citizenship, fundamental right, DPSP, fundamental duties, union states, executives and legislature. That is how this class is going to move. But before we start, we should be equipped enough to know how we are going to take maximum benefit out of these class series. Because what matters is that you people taking maximum benefit out of this class, no matter how many times you have revised polity, how many test series you have given. One portion which we need to strive is that all the concepts, I'm saying all the concepts which are in your syllabus should be, on your tips. And when I say on your tips, it doesn't mean just knowing about the meaning of sovereignty. One understanding which people have is that they have the meaning of sovereignty in mind. Yes, we know what sovereignty is, that there is no foundation from any external and internal power, and the organization which is having sovereignty is having full freedom to act in the way it wants. That is basic understanding of sovereignty. But if you look back to the 5-year question papers, many times UPSC is asking some basic concepts, but UPSC is playing in statements. I'm going to show some questions and we are going to deal with these questions together in this class. So when I say concept, so across the syllabus, we will go chapter wise, but meanwhile, I'm going to make sure that you are having adequate understanding of these concepts. For example, these concepts, some of them are found easily in Lakshmikant, but others are not found in Lakshmikant. For that, we need to have a keen understanding of repetitions of certain, articles. For example, this word legalism. This is one important concept of polity, as it is repeated many times in past 1 year in some articles related to judiciary, legislature, and fundamental right. Even if this word legalism is not mentioned in preamble like sovereignty, socialist, secular, democratic, but it has importance. So this is found in important articles. So I'm going to cover all these. Let's have one question from this. The question is, legalism means. So this class is not going to be some pravachanas. So you have to participate here. It doesn't matter you answer right or wrong. What matters is that you people are participating, because there is a rule in psychology. Once you commit a mistake and you got the right answer, then there's great chance that you won't forget the concept which I elaborate around legalism. You won't forget the logic which I use in this particular question. So statement is in front of you. Get started. Legalism means law passed by legislature shall be in agreement with the constitution. Is it the meaning of legalism? It looks like yes, it can be meaning of legalism. Law passed by legislature shall be in agreement with constitution. Law should be any legislation which is passed, any law which is passed by a parliament or state legislature should be in agreement with our constitution. That is, that statement itself seems correct, right? Second is power of judiciary to decide the legality of the laws passed by the legislature. Now the focus is on power of judiciary. In this statement, focus was on law passed by legislature. But this statement also seems fine, because power of judiciary to decide the legality of the laws passed by legislature itself resembles what? Judicial review. And when a Supreme Court or a High Court use this phenomena of judicial or doctrine of judicial review, the basic tenet they have in mind is that any law should be in consonance with our constitution, right or not? You concur with me on this point or not? Just keep commenting. This way you are going to take maximum benefit out of this class, and I want that for you. Demarcation of power between center and state, federalism, you all know, and all of them. Now tell me, what is your guess? What is the right answer? Just start. I'm going to explain. You need not to worry. All of these, okay. Aviral is saying D, Palukurti is saying B, A, D. Okay. So we have a kind of diversity with regard to your opinion about this question, right? So it is well proved, right? Now, UPSC design question like this. When it comes to concept, I am going to categorize in this lecture some topics which we need to segregate as under the umbrella of concepts. There are some topics which we need to segregate in our mind under the umbrella of processes. There are some topics which we need to segregate under the umbrella of current linkages through diverse topics. This segregation may not be present in your notes, may not be present in your Lakshmikant, but we need this kind of segregation in your mind, because it is your mind which is going to go along with you in your exam. Now, let me tell you, if we segregate these statements seems fine, although this statement resembles federalism. So this federalism although comes under legalism, but it is bit away from the meaning of legalism, because what question is demanding is legalism means. So then if we look at the option number A, law passed by legislature shall be in the agreement with the constitution. It seems fine. Yes, it seems fine. But when UPSC is designing this question, UPSC wants exact meaning. So this is not the exact meaning. Many people would answer that A is answer. Many people would take C. Many people would take D. The right answer is B. Power of judiciary to decide the legality of the laws passed by legislature. And who gave this meaning? Actually, this meaning was given by Mr. A.V. Dicey. You all must be knowing the name of renowned A.V. Dicey, who contributed a lot on the concept of rule of law. His name is given in Lakshmikant, but this relation is not given in Lakshmikant. This relation was found in many articles. So this is how sometimes UPSC connects these concepts. This is the book in which A.V. Dicey used this concept of legalism twice and gave the meaning of legalism. The name of the book, The Law of the Constitution. Now comes the processes. So one, we have to prepare about the concepts, and those concepts along the demand of UPSC, not just meanings. So I'm going to elaborate on other concepts too, but as per the timing of the class, I need to give you the whole picture, and also I need to elaborate on some concepts. So I've designed the chapter, this whole series along this demand. The second is processes. So in the whole polity, various chapters have various processes. And many times UPSC makes statements about some minute details associated with these processes. You may be having broad idea, but UPSC is not interested in broad idea. UPSC demands detail, and devil is in the detail. For example, reorganization of state. And you should also understand there are some processes, there are some concepts, there are some current affair linkages which you should give more focus upon because they are very much in news. For example, reorganization of state. So you all know that reorganization of state has a distinct process. I hope all of you know that Article 3, in Article 3, we have this process now. When we talk about Part 1 of Indian Constitution, from Article 1, 2, 3, 4, we talk about the process by which we can bifurcate, trifurcate, change the boundaries, change the name of the state. You know the process, right? We have to understand the process. Let me give you an idea what I meant by the word process so that you can align your knowledge along this line. So when I talk about the process, what I mean that if you need to reorganize, a state, there's a process. What is the process? There's a role of president. Any bill related to changing the boundaries of any state needs to be presented, or I would say introduced, in House of Parliament, any house, whether Lok Sabha, whether Rajya Sabha, can be introduced only after prior recommendation of President. You all know that. This is a basic statement, but the process is Council of Ministers should first present this bill. This is step number 1. Present this bill before President, that Honorable President, we want to reorganize this state of J&K. We want to take this statehood away and convert it into 2 UTs. So that's a process of reorganization. So After this, what president do? President will send this bill to state legislative assembly. State legislative assembly, that is step number 2. But there's another point here, that when president send this bill to state legislative assembly, president also mentions the time within which the state legislative assembly has to send this bill back to honorable president. The time is a detail. And when president receives, none of the recommendation made by a state legislative assembly is binding on president. It means recommendations are not binding. UPSC might try to confuse you by saying that if a state legislative assembly has rejected the proposal of reorganization by special majority or special majority along with more than 50% of the total seats, and then this rejection will be binding on president. No, such rejection won't be binding. So this is step number 3. Whatever state legislative assemblies say, it doesn't matter whether president has to accept or not. Some of you might say, banaya kyun hai? Why this procedure has been made jab sunna hi nahi hai to? The reason was that there is possibility that this state legislative assembly might give some points which could add some value in this bill. It means it is on the discretion of Council of Ministers, because the real power is here. That they may think, okay, Honorable President, you have received some recommendations. Okay, we can take a look. After that, this bill is sent to any house. Consider it as Lok Sabha and it is Rajya Sabha. If it is presented in Lok Sabha, then it will be passed. 1, 2, 3, it is step number 4. So it is introduced in Lok Sabha by Honorable President now. So when it is sent to Lok Sabha, then Lok Sabha has to pass it via simple majority. It is needed. What majority is needed? Simple majority. And after it is passed from Lok Sabha, it will be sent to Rajya Sabha, step number 5. And when it is passed by Rajya Sabha, it will again come to Honorable President. Honorable President will sign it like Shashank Tyagi. And this bill will become act. Congratulations. The state has been reorganized. We have divided one state. So this is how the thing should flow. So this is what I mean when I say processes. So there are many processes like this within the scheme of polity. For example, there are election process of president, election process of vice president, similarly removal process connected to positions like constitutional positions, impeachment of president, removal of Supreme Court, High Court judges, CEC, non-constitutional posts, removal. So many students remain confused in removal process of Supreme Court, High Court judge, or removal process of CEC, or removal process of CAG. Then there are some selection committees for specific posts. So then let's take an example of Union Territory. So there is a process of state reorganization we have already explained. You all know that J&K issue was in news, right? So let's have one question from it. UPSC might ask this question from in subsequent prelims on 27 June. J&K is the first Indian state to be stripped of its statehood. You have to choose correct. No secession of Indian territory can take place without constitutional amendment. Now, honor is on you. Just identify which of the following statements are correct. Only one is correct, only two is correct, both are correct, none of these. Let's start the game. So let's understand the statement. J&K is the first Indian state to be stripped of its statehood. Many students have said only one is correct. I would say that this statement is wrong. J&K is not the first state to be stripped of its statehood. This case of Delhi also. Let me tell you, from 1952 to 1956, Delhi was having statehood. Even on 27th March of 1952, there was first legislative assembly election in Delhi, and Chaudhary Brahm Prakash sworn in as Delhi's chief minister. But as we move into this constitutional history or legal history, we find 1956 State Reorganization Act. At the time, Delhi was stripped of its statehood and given the status of UT, Union Territory. And this status also altered by 69th Constitutional Amendment Act 1993, when Delhi was given the status of National Capital Territory. So NCT status is in midway of state and UT. The main point is, in 1956, what happened with J&K also happened with Delhi. So this statement is factually wrong. Let's go to the next statement. No secession of Indian territory can take place without constitutional amendment. This statement is correct because this statement is related to Beru Bari case judgment. So in Beru Bari case judgment, it was cleared by Supreme Court that no secession of Indian territory can take place without constitutional amendment. So the answer is only 2. Now comes the third portion. Third portion is we should have a comprehensive current affair linkage. When I say comprehensive, this is one portion which, creates some kind of struggle among students, because when we say comprehensive, it means at least 1.5 year worth of polity current affairs should be embedded in your concepts. So we have got you covered. You need not to worry. What I need is your attention. That is the only thing what I want. And you should miss this class only when this world is ending and you are the only person who can save this world. Then you should be there saving the world, not in this class, because your participation in saving the world would save us. If that is not the case, then you should be present in class. Let's move to the second question. You all know that Ladakh is very much in news. Which of the following statements are correct regarding Ladakh? This is what I'm doing. I'm doing current affair linkage comprehensively and embedding it into concept of polity. Ladakh does not have an elective legislative assembly. This is factual. Second statement is each district within its union territory elects an autonomous district council. You should focus on this word, each district within this union territory elects an autonomous district council. Legislative assembly nahi hai, but yeah, that's what statement is saying. It is bordered by the Tibetan autonomous region. Tibet to the east, direction is east. Singham Rahul, you need not to mug up all the articles and all the amendments. That is not the requirement of UPSC. UPSC wants bureaucrats who are smart in understanding the provisions, understanding the demand of the question as well as the whole scheme. What needs to be done, that all the important articles, but when I say important, I mean which were relevant in past 1.5 years, those should be on your tips. About amendments, there are some important amendments. When I say important, I mean those amendments which made very large scale changes in our political structure. For example, 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, 44th Constitutional Amendment Act, 91st, 73rd, 74th. So these kind of amendments should be on your tips. Apart from this, there are some amendments which are not directly in news, but outcome of these amendments were in news. So UPSC demand that you should have background knowledge. You should have this curiosity to understand why these things are in news. What is the background? This is what is asked in this question. Ladakh might be in news due to its reorganization. Ladakh might be in news due to the inventions which are going on there. Ladakh might be in news due to some cultural facets which are coming in news. But what UPSC demand is that you have to get prelims. Are you searching about Ladakh enough or not? And when I say enough, enough just to handle these kind of questions. Let's understand statement wise. Ladakh does not have an elected legislative assembly. Yes, it is correct. Ladakh doesn't have. It is very much clear with the way reorganization of J&K was done. Ladakh doesn't have legislative assembly. Each district within this union territory elects an autonomous district council. Yes, it is correct. How many districts does Ladakh have? Ladakh has only 2 districts. What are those? Leh and Kargil. And both have this autonomous district council. So this statement is also correct. It is bordered by the Tibet autonomous region to the east. Look at this map. Here is Ladakh and look at its east, Tibet. So Tibet is present over its east, means this statement is also correct. The answer is D. All are correct. Let's move. So when it comes to understanding fundamental rights, DPSP, fundamental duties, what needs to be done? That all the relevant knowledge, the points from where questions are asked, should be in your mind via mind maps. Like here this is presented. I think it is clear, yeah? Okay. So from fundamental rights, first of all, if I ask, how should you approach fundamental rights? What generally people do, people read about that, okay, this fundamental right is present in part 3. Okay, fundamental right is considered as Magna Carta of India. What UPSC is demanding is, do you know why fundamental right is called Magna Carta? UPSC might ask this question in upcoming prelims. And when it is asked, just remember this day, this moment when you are present here. Why it is called Magna Carta? Yeah, first time citizens, there was a relation between citizen and the state in a way where there are limitations of the state. Citizens were given rights. This word Magna Carta was very much popular for the first time in the context of England when King John, under the pressure of their barons, their lords, King John signed this Magna Carta. The English meaning of Magna Carta is Charter of Citizens. When I say charter, it means it provides some individual rights. It places a plane of law where king as well as other subjects are on the same plane. Means same law would be applicable over king, over ruling class, and same law would be applicable over individuals. So this was a major transforming moment in the era, or I would say in the whole constitutional history. I'm not just talking about India, I'm talking about the overall constitutional history. I'm talking about Britain too. Part 3, okay, Article 12 to Article 35, you all know that. Okay, I'm going to expand over this in the subsequent class, but my focus here is, you should start this with the word right. Rights. We will talk about fundamental rights after we are clear with the concept of rights. Because UPSC has asked a question, Which of the following statements are correct with regard to rights? And the statements were, rights are some demands by individuals to state. There was another angle that rights are some limitations over state. There was another statement that rights are some demands by state towards individuals. So these kind of questions are being asked by UPSC. That's why my submission here is, whenever you start reading or learning a concept, don't just focus on the provisions. Focus on the background of this concept. This is the new trend of UPSC. If you look past 5-year questions, we also had a time when questions were direct in nature. UPSC will ask some direct questions too. 4 or 5 questions would be there, but 4 or 5 questions won't be sufficient to give you marks which are required to clear this cutoff. For this, you need this kind of approach. So let me give you a question, and over this I'll build your concepts. Okay, which of the following statements are correct? Number 1, it is open to a citizen to waive any of the fundamental rights conferred by the Constitution. The judiciary presumes a law passed by the legislature as constitutional. The principle of equality means that every law must have universal application to all persons. What do you think is the correct answer? You just need to attempt. I have no expectations from you as of now. Let's understand the demand. It is open to a citizen to waive any. Focus on this word, any. UPSC play in polity by using words only, any. These are 2 words around which UPSC play a lot, only and any. Any of the fundamental rights conferred by the Constitution. Do you think you have this liberty that you would say that I won't follow Article 17? Article 17 of Indian Constitution, what does it say? Provisions related to untouchability. Can any one of you say that you will practice untouchability and no one can touch you? No legal authority can take action against you because you have yourself waived off this fundamental right. Can this system work this way? No, it cannot work this way. That's why this statement is wrong. When there were protests related to CAA, at the time somebody quote Arundhati Roy in way back in 1998. I think many of you were not born then. So at that time, Arundhati Roy made a statement. She said that I am a mobile republic and I secede. So in that statement, she was saying she declared herself secede from this framework of polity, and she declared herself mobile republic. So can anyone do this? We all know that in part 1 of Indian Constitution, it is very much clear that India is an indestructible union of destructible states. The word is indestructible union. No one can secede, no territory can secede, that is for sure. But when it comes to individual, it is not clear in Constitution that if individual has this power to secede, it is mentioned that you have power to renunciate your citizenship. But seceding and living here, having citizenship, it was never clear. I would say provision along this line. So my point is that none of you can secede from provisions mentioned in fundamental right. You cannot be selective, because it is not just about you. It is also about the people around you. If we look at Article 15, subclause 1, subclause 2, which talks about that neither state nor individual would do any discrimination on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, can you say that you waive off Article 15 and you would do discrimination, and none of our public authorities should take action against you because you have waived off Article 15? Then our authorities would say, oh, aha, चलिए चलते हैं आपको लेकर जेल में, चलिए चलते हैं आपको लेकर कोर्ट. So this would be the status. So I hope this is clear that first statement is wrong. When it comes to second statement, the judiciary presumes a law passed by the legislature as constitutional. This statement is correct. This statement is true. Some of you would say that the judiciary presumes a law passed by legislature as constitutional. How can it be correct? It should be false. That's what judicial review means. But I would say that is limitation of your conceptual understanding. That is not truth. Truth is something else. Let me tell you the truth. Let me give you an example. When these CA protests were going on, there were more than 140 litigations in Supreme Court saying that Honorable Supreme Court, please declare this CAA as null and void, as unconstitutional. At that time, there was another gentleman, another Jolie LLB kind of lawyer. He also presented a litigation and requesting Honorable Supreme Court, please declare CAA as constitutional. I may be alone. These may be 140, but my litigation has power of conscience. At the time, Supreme Court said to the litigant that you should have this in mind, that there is a doctrine of presumption of constitutionality in India. And this doctrine of presumption of constitutionality means whenever a law is passed, whenever a bill is passed and it is turned into act, judiciary presumes that it is constitutional. Now, it is duty of litigant, and with an argument, judiciary will decide after checking, oh, these clauses are flouted. So this is duty of litigant. This is duty of those lawyers to present arguments, and on these arguments, our judges, bench of judges will think, and then they will declare that particular law as unconstitutional. At that time, Supreme Court told that litigant, whenever a law is passed by legislature, we already presume that that is constitutional. So you need not to worry. There's no need of your petition. Yes, their petition can be considered, but not your petition. Saqib, yes, Supreme Court can take suo motu cognizance, but in that suo motu cognizance, whenever deliberation start in Supreme Court, it is direct. It is a principle. It is a judicial doctrine that Supreme Court judges will start from this presumption that this law is constitutional. Now the duty is on the argument, that deliberation which Supreme Court judges and these advocates would do, and then they will try to identify on what basis this law can be declared unconstitutional. But the start is from this doctrine, which is presumption of constitutionality. Sagnik, are you clear now? I can create n number of examples and you will be clear. Just tell me if you're clear or not. No, okay. So let me clear it once more. So the statement is saying judiciary presumes, the word is presumes. The word presume is different from the word believe. There is nothing like believe here. The word is presumption. Okay, presumption means the word is presumption means we will start from this basis that law passed by legislature is constitutional. Now it is on the litigant. Now it is on this deliberation, the discussion, those arguments. Now we will check on what basis this law can be declared unconstitutional. Fatima, it is not necessary when I am saying the word presume, don't think that all the laws which are passed by our parliament will be coming to Supreme Court. And these are not coming to Supreme Court on the basis of this doctrine. Otherwise, they would have come to Supreme Court. Now, but beauty of this separation of power which is used in India is this check and balance. And we have established, there is a procedure established by law. If a procedure is followed, it means this law is valid. It is after some time, this is another debate, that after some time our judiciary introduced the concept of due process of law. No, we won't just focus on the procedure, we would also focus on the content. But I can make n number of questions from there. There will be good quality questions. We will discuss it in detail. But now my focus is, are you clear with this doctrine, presumption of constitutionality? Presumption means we will start from this basis. We need not to, declare some law as constitutional. That's why that one litigant was told that it is not Supreme Court who will decide that this is constitutional or not. You will say that please declare it unconstitutional, then we will review. This is one good question. The principle of equality means that every law must have universal application to all persons. Great. This principle, actually this statement is wrong. Why this is wrong? The principle of equality means that every law must have universal application. How can this be universal application of principle of equality? Let me give an example. How many students are there? There are around 43, 45 students, right? So if you ask, sir, please allow us and empower us, I would say empower us to watch a match which is happening beyond this boundary. Consider that this is a boundary, this is a wall, and you are my students, and you have come that, sir, we believe that you believe in principle of equality, and we would request you to use principle of equality and empower us. Our heights are such that if we are standing, we won't be able to look beyond this. Even if we jump, then also we are not able to, watch that match. So what I did, I used some stools, some chairs. I placed one chair here. Okay. So this chair is of, say, this height. Why I'm using different chair? Because all of you won't be of same height, right? There would be some student who is of this height. There might be some student who is of this height. There might be some student who is this height. So the student who is having smaller height in comparison would require chair with a big height. So what I would do, I would say that I am giving some great height that is very much necessary to empower you to watch this match. Now, can you say that, sir, you are doing partiality? You are giving this chair of, whose height is maximum to this person because he is your favorite student? I would say no. There's nothing like favoritism here. My duty is to empower you. So what I am doing, I am giving you chairs of different heights, and all of you are now able to watch this match. So what I did, I use a principle of differentiation in order to have or achieve equality at the outcome. So at this time, my core idea was principle of equality, but my application was not universal. Okay, so my application was not universal. So that is why this statement is wrong, because the word universal application was written here. I hope you are clear. If clear, just mention confirm. Yes, Siddharth, you got me right, but I did not wanted to use reservation here because I am going to explain reservation with regard to the need of the exam when I elaborate on Article 16. I am also going to elaborate on reservation and promotion and all the criteria which are necessary. Just mention confirm if all is set until now. All set? Great. So now I'm open for some question and answers. If you have some doubts, you can ask me now. Someone was saying, sir, please show that flow chart, right? Okay, this is that flow chart. So if you want to ask me something about this PSP program, which is starting on 1st of March, then I can answer your question. What we are doing is, our module is based on this design where we are comprehensively covering this static part and dynamic part along with important questions. So we are going to elaborate on the concept, and when this elaboration is done, this is going to comprehensively cover the whole syllabus in this time span which is available in the schedule. Okay, Samida, universal application means that if I am giving something, then I will use this principle of distributive equality, means the proportions would be equal. But don't you think, Samidha, in order to achieve equality, sometimes we need to differentiate the proportions? Like I did in this example, my sole focus was that outcome should be that you people able to look beyond this wall, beyond this screen. So I uses this differentiated proportion. And universal application means I'm giving someone is asking, sir, how classes are going to its duration. Okay, so this polity module is divided into 3 weeks. So in 1 week, in first week, there are topics like will go according to the scheme of polity, means historical background, but historical background will be in my style with a twist according to the questions. We are going to cover all the acts from 1773 Revolution Act to Pitt's India Act to charters to Council Act to Government of India Act 1935 to Government of India Act 1947. So we are going to cover all this. It would be like a train. You will hop in on 1st March, and this train will cover all the destinations. Our speed would be such so that all the students can be accommodated. No one should be left behind. And when I say no one, it means that our speed would be there, because this is prelim support program. This is not just a crash course. The term crash course means we are speeding up things in a way we are selectively teaching. But when I'm saying prelim support program, we are doing this comprehensive coverage of both static and dynamic topics. So that is the difference. Yes, Kirti, actually if you go to this Educami website, you will find the whole schedule. So you'll find the schedule that from 1st March to 6th March, you have polity, then you have history, then you have other subjects, then you have polity. So this is how we are going to move. We have designed this schedule from a specific purpose, because once I have dealt with some sections of polity, then what I need is that when I come to this polity module second part, by then you should be practicing some MCQs. so that you can be, molding into this approach which is required for prelims. My purpose is around 20 to 24 questions are going to be asked, which means around 1/4, roughly 1/4 of the 100 questions. And if I consider 20 as the median, it means 40 marks worth are going to be coming from this polity section. And when we say cutoff, so cutoff is, it is not the right time to talk about cutoff because exam is not there. But if we have some broad idea, if cutoff is around say 105 for the general, and you are getting 40 marks from a portion like polity, so its importance need not require any introduction from me. And this is a low hanging fruit. If you cover this subject according to this approach, concepts, processes, and current affair comprehensive linkage all embedded within these class modules, then my target is all 2024 questions should be covered. Because there are 1 or 2 questions where UPSC try to place some statements, but these statements, you will be able to deal with this by practicing these techniques of deduction, of relation, when 2 statements seems correct, but only 1 is correct. PSP test and Gear Up tests are same or different? Akshay, PSP Prelim Support Program is a class program, okay, and Top Gear is our test series that is going along with it. Sunil Yadav, yes, it is very much clear. The whole module is designed, whole workbooks are designed. Our methodology would be like this, that I won't be dictating notes here. What I'm going to do, Sunil, that I start with a topic, I'm going to elaborate on its dimensions, I'm going to connect with the questions and the approaches, and you at the same time would be having this content in your hand, and you will be having some fill in the blanks between this. So after this class gets over, what you are going to do, or during the class you can also do that, but I would advise do it after the class, that try to fill those fill in the blanks. This way you will be doing this revision again. What is necessary is that you need not to mug up current. Current also has a distinct approach. There are some portions which are overlapping. If you look to the current of past 1.5 years, if you look at one portion, say polity, if you look at one portion at economy, you will find many overlapping concepts, many overlapping terminologies. That's how this current affair part is going to be linked. So I'm receiving some prompts from the team. Actually, my time is over. So let's meet again. See you sometime again. Till then, keep learning, keep growing. Most important, when I started this class, I asked you, what is your rating from 1 to 10 when it comes to understanding and content readiness for your prelims? So some of you might have written like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At this point, I'm asking, if we have achieved a plus in that rating or not? If yes, just mention yes. I'm not saying 10 out of 10. What is needed is increment of 1. If it is done, that means your time and my time is utilized well. Okay. See you next time. Till then, take care. Keep learning, keep growing.